of the rise, of the new rise again of, say, Marxist doctrine. I would say it's part of postmodernism. Maybe it's postmodernism more than anything else. Because the postmodernists, that's a philosophical community, let's say, believe that the entire point of human categorization is power, and the dialogue between people is only a power dialogue, and that there's no real reality outside of interpretation, and that basically what we do is exchange interpretive viewpoints to ratchet up our dominance and status. And that's that. And there's no biology is an ideology, and the eye of the objective world is an ideology, and science is an ideology, and it's all interpretation all the way down, like turtles all the way down.
What do you mean by it's all about power? Like, in what way?
Well, you imagine that there are groups of people who are competing in the world for resources, I suppose, and that it's a zero-sum game, and it's every group against every other group. And the reason that we engage in dialogue isn't to establish the truth or move towards some closer approximation of reality, but to structure this social interaction so that our group comes up on top.
Right, and that is really what the problem is with all this, is that it's not just a matter of choosing to be defined in one way, but compelling others to define you in that way.
Well, one of the most awful elements of it, I think, is the idea that individuals should be defined in terms of their group identity at all. I mean, you'd argue, and this is one of these weird inversions that's so characteristic of this chaotic state that we're in, when people originally started fighting against unfair discrimination, and I say unfair discrimination because lots of discrimination is fair. If you discriminate against people on the basis of their competence, that's perfectly reasonable. It's unfair discrimination that constitutes the proper battleground for people who have more egalitarian viewpoint. But the initial idea was to eliminate the proclivity for people to be categorized according to their group identity, because that was interfering with everyone's ability to view them as competent individuals. But that got flipped probably in the 70s after the Soviet state so self-evidently was revealed as a catastrophe. That got flipped so that the world was turned into one group against another, power struggle from one group against another, and then the social justice warrior types and the lefties, even the Democratic Party, started categorizing everybody according to their ethnic or sexual or racial identity and made that the canonical element of their being. And that's an absolutely terrible thing to do. At least in the Soviet Union, when that happened, for example, when they introduced that idea along with the notion of class guilt. So, for example, when Soviets collectivized the farms, they pretty much wiped out or raped and froze to death all of their competent farmers. They called them kulaks, and they attributed class guilt to them because they were successful peasants, and they defined their success as oppression and theft. They killed all of them, pretty much, shipped them off to Siberia and froze them to death, and they were the productive agriculturalists in the Soviet Union. And then in the 1930s in the Ukraine, because of that, about 6 million Ukrainians starved to death. But the Soviets were big on collective guilt, and all of these things that you hear about now, like white privilege, for example, they're